Welcome to USA Football's Coach and Coordinator Podcast, where top football coaches from around the country share their stories, philosophies, concepts, and strategies to help you get better on and off the field. Now, here's your host, Keith Grabowski.
Hey, coaches, before we get going today, I just wanted to thank you for all you've been doing to support this podcast. And we have an incredible lineup coming up here. We have just about every major college conference represented. We have a ton of FBS coaches, Division II coaches, Division III coaches, some great high school football coaches coming on the podcast to share with you and help you grow professionally during this time. I really appreciate all of you asking your questions on Twitter. Please follow me at Coach K. Grabowski for our daily updates on our guests and your opportunity to ask questions. We will read them on the show and attribute those to you. So please contribute to the show as much as you can. Our football development model, which is something we've rolled out here at USA Football, and this is really for you to be able to help your youth football programs develop. It's about a long-term athlete development plan. It's something that comes off of the American development model, which is something that the USOC has put together. The idea is that we're able to teach skills in a progression starting at the youngest ages. We're also looking at the different game types we have, whether that's flag, which is non-contact, limited contact games like padded flag or tackle bar, and full contact, and the right progressions for contact teaching there as well. Be sure to check out all we do at footballdevelopment.com and check out what we're doing with the FDM, the football development model, at usafootball.com/FDM. On today's podcast, we're going to talk a little pro-style offense, talking about shifts and motions and 11 and 12 personnel, run action passes and quarterback development, and how that's all kind of translated more into an adaptation of some spread and RPO concepts in the XFL game. And joining me today on the podcast, again for the second time, is the offensive coordinator at the DC Defenders, Tanner Engstrand. Tanner, it's great to be talking ball with you again.
Yeah, great to be back on. I really appreciate it. It's a privilege to come back and talk to you and your listeners.
Absolutely. So I think the first time we connected, you were at San Diego, and it was right at the time you were making a transition over from being the OC at San Diego to being an analyst at Michigan. And, from Michigan, then you've gone on to the XFL and become a coordinator again. For our listeners out there, definitely want to link back to Coach's first interview with us, where we talked about and shared a little bit more of his background and development as a coach. So be sure to check that out in our show notes. But today, Coach, I guess if you could, just fill in the gap, the move from then Michigan to the XFL, how did that opportunity present itself?
Yeah, that opportunity presented itself when Pep Hamilton decided to take the head coaching job for the DC Defenders in the XFL. I'm leaving Michigan, and there was a couple months there where he had gone, and we'd had a few conversations, and ultimately it turned into a great opportunity for me to become a coordinator again and try my foot into the professional football world, which was a little bit of a departure since I had been in college the whole time. But we felt like it was a great opportunity to get to that level and become a coordinator again, and we're real thankful to Pep for that opportunity.
So, Coach, in looking at some of the things you wrote down as we were discussing topics to talk about today, using multiple personnel groupings, formations, motions, shifts, run, action, passing, to push the ball vertically from under center. The description of it came right to mind of, well, this sounds a lot like some of the stuff that Shanahan and McVay and LaFleur are doing and flourishing with in the NFL. But you've had a little bit, I guess, of a little bit more of the dynamic of rule changes and the personnel available for you to be able to get into the spread and RPO world as well, and adding those things into basically a pro-style offense.
Yeah, that's kind of what we've been developing here over the last year since we got together and building the offense for the DC Defenders. Was we ended up called it a no-coast offense, which meant we were going to bring some some elements of our West Coast pass, with Pep and myself, with the pro-style stuff, with the addition of some of the new school things where guys trying to attack space and do some of the RPO things to take advantage of those different elements of the defense, along with, again, staying true to the roots, which ultimately is going to be being physical up front, establishing a run game, and then building everything off of that.
Yeah, I remember a tweet going out from Quarterback Collective early in the NFL season, and can't remember, I think it was, he was at the 49ers game. This was Richmond Flowers, and he tweeted out, a run game is the quarterback's best friend. And, we saw that this year, that, the Niners especially, just dominant in the run game all the way to the Super Bowl. And the other thing, which they did a ton of, was a lot of the shifts in motions. I think at one point I read that they had like 73% of their snaps were with some kind of movement involved. So now you mentioned to me, though, the movement, you had some considerations as far as the play clock that may limit you a little bit.
Yeah, so, in the XFL, we had a 25-second play clock, which is far departure from a 40-second play clock, in college. Occasionally, the 25 seconds when the ball is dead and that type of stuff. But we really had a 25-second play clock between every play with a running clock outside of 2 minutes. So the game happened a little bit faster. So that put most people in more of a no huddle or a muddle huddle type of mentality because of the time constraints. We also did have a new communication system, which was pretty interesting, where all the, quote, skill players on offense, non-O linemen, had headsets in their helmet. So we could talk directly to those guys, calling the formations and then the quarterback would relay the calls like a no-huddle offense to the line as to what we were running. So, with the shortage of time, we didn't get to utilize quite as many shifts and motions as we would have in the past, as you're seeing in some of those offenses like Coach Shanahan and the Niners or Packers and really the Titans and those types of places where they are utilizing the run game to open up the pass game. And I think that's a pretty true statement that you had earlier, where the run game is a quarterback, and why is that? Is because then you got an established run game. The defense has to really commit more players to the box, opening up deeper holes deeper down the field for your deep crosses or your deep digs and those types of plays and off of those run actions.
So, Coach, I'm interested in the communication. You're going from the college level where it's all hand signals or sending a play into the huddle off a wristband or whatever it might be, to now being able to communicate with players on the field. So there's that, I guess, that efficiency in getting the call to the skill players. How did that change things for you in just terms of how you thought about procedures, right, and the procedures you're going to use?
Yeah, I think the thing that it enabled you to do is to get the formation and the non-O linemen lined up quickly into a formation, and maybe you can double count a little bit and try to see what the defense is doing, or have some sort of man zone indicator or indicator formation and get your play call in based off of that. If you got them lined up quick enough, we were able to take advantage of that a little bit this year. But ultimately, it was, if we saw something that didn't look quite right, or you thought somebody had a bewildered look on their face or something like that, you could really still communicate with them through the headset and go, hey, you got this route, or remember this, or something along those lines as the play was going down, because there was no cutoff. So you could make that the guys were in the right spot. You wanted to leave a little grace period for the guys to play, though, too. You don't want to just keep talking to them the whole time.
So I think that's an interesting concept there. So whether it's through the headset like you guys have, or very fast like you see some teams with their hand signals, utilizing then shifts and motions with that, right? The advantage that comes from that. And I've had a lot of coaches interested in this off season, and how do I add some of those things back to my offense, and as well as not just how do I do it, but why? What's the advantage of me using shift and motions against the defense?
Yeah, some of the advantages, I think, of shifts and motions, it's really one, you're going to try to undress, the defense and get them to show you what they're going to do, and really to try to set their defense to how you want it based on that shift to attack the specific area of the defense that you want to attack. For example, if you want to trade the tight end, or you want to be in 12 personnel and be in a wing set, and you want to move them from one side to the other, why would you want to do that? For example, if they're an odd front team, are they going to reset the whole structure of the defense? Are they going to flop the linebackers on both sides? The 4 down front, do they have a total reset, or do they always set a 3 technique to the tight end? And when you shift, does that 3 technique just bump down to a shade, and then the shade's got to bump out to a 3? Do their defensive ends, is he a strong side D end? Is he a weak side D end? And getting those players into positions that they're not typically there for, or in their defensive structure, that's not where they want them. And then so with the shift, you can get that defense into an unfamiliar position or doing something that they're not as good at as maybe the other side of the front. So I think that, number one, is part of those shifts in the motion that we're trying to look for. Are they a reset team, or what is it? What does it look like, and how do they adjust when you do that to really get what you want in a front? As far as motions are concerned, say you're in 11 personnel and they want to set the 3 technique away from the running back or to the tight end. They want to set a 3 to the tight end, but you only want to run inside zone to the shade, to a G bubble. Well, if you set your tight end to the one side and then you can motion your tight end across to the other side, well, they set their 3 to the tight end and the back, but now if they cut at the front or they leave it be, then you can find a way to run the ball at a low technique, or like I said, at a G bubble or a shade. Trying to get the play that you want run to the ideal look is really what you're trying to do as far as the run game is going with those shifts and those motions.
Coach, when you look at this and you're breaking a team down, and this is something I'm thinking back to when I was at BW, we would use a lot of 12 as well, but the guys we'd use were kind of hybrid, so they could go out and play in the slot a little bit. I mean, we might not run them on a bubble, but there were things they could do. We looked at it too. What could we do, for example, to get a defense, start off in like a double tight, double flank, right? 2x2 formation, get them to make their double tight check, and then go into something else that they would also probably have only 1 or 2 checked for as well. Most of them only 1. So we'd go from a double tight then to a trips bunch, right? And now we go from a check to a check, which we felt like almost ensured we're going to get that one look, that they're going to get out of some of the things they're doing and use their basic check, because we moved from one, something they had to check once into something else they had to check again.
No, yeah, you're exactly right. One of the things with those shifts and those motions, what you're talking about, from the double tight to some sort of bunch is you're getting the defense out of their initial call. Like, you're making them have to check, and a defense really in some of those formations, they're going to have one check, such as maybe it's an empty check, or like you're saying, a bunch check. You're getting them out of their first call. So they're having to play something that they didn't necessarily want to play. And then if you know what that is, then you can go ahead and really have a good chance to attack that defense where it's weak.
So, Coach, moving on and looking at, the personnel and, run action passing for you guys, something that's been really good. Part of that attack for you is utilizing those personnel groupings and formations to make those same concepts appear different. Something, again, you see, again, looking at what the Niners did, again and again, the same concepts, but all kinds of different presentations of it. For you guys, kind of the same philosophy, same thought. Use those personnel groupings, use those formations to get you into something that's advantageous for the run action pass.
That's right. And really, your run actions have to be based off of the runs that you run, So if you're an under center inside zone team, you're going to have your under center inside zone run actions, however that may be. Is it an open side or a strong side, and those types of things to protect the run, right? To make those things look the same. So going into any given week, you're really kind of saying, okay, how are we going to run the ball, and what are their coverages behind it? And that coverage, when they start committing guys into the box, and you're building those again off of your runs. Now, sometimes the protection may not be exactly the run, but it looks very similar to it up front and with the ball handling and those types of things. But as far as using the same types of play concepts, for example, we would really say we wanted to run somebody in the deep on the post, somebody in the 18 to 22 yard area in the hash, or between the hash and the numbers area, and then the third level, somebody out in the flat, right? So, again, everybody's run some sort of, whether you call it sail or or rattle or python or, whatever you might want to call it, with a post and a corner and somebody in the flat. You can run that type of concept out of, say, 12 personnel. Well, then you can get into 11 personnel. You can also do it out of 22 if you wanted to, or 13 if you have it. And then really you're building the same thing, just with a different formation or a different motion, or maybe bringing somebody on a deep cross, which you see a lot of, right, with a post and a deep cross coming into that area with somebody into the flat. Just, you're really putting guys in the same exact area. Jim McElwain, actually, something I really started to put into my verbiage is the dots are the same, where the quarterback's looking. He's got a high-low read. He's going post to that second level area, 18 to 22, back to the flat. Wherever you bring that guy from, however you get him there, it's always somebody in the same area. And now what concept you're going to run is really going to be based on what coverage those guys are playing, and how do they try to cover those areas up, and where are their run fits, and how's your action gonna affect those guys, because really you're trying to disarm the linebackers with your actions to get that intermediate level player behind them. So I think that's something that we've always kind of thought of, and in addition to that, just trying to get the best match, get your best player into those areas.
Coach, looking at the quarterback, whether that's run action pass or just drop back passing, I know something you're a big believer in is their feet, right? Using their feet as they read the pass concepts. And I'm completely aligned with you there. In fact, going back to, I could think of it's like ingrained in my head now, because I would say it so often to our quarterbacks, is move your eyes and feet through the progression, right? That is not just their eyes. Their feet actually calibrate it, provide the timing, and move them to where they need to be in a progression. Talk to us a little bit about your philosophy with that and how you train that.
When we talk about the quarterback reading a pass concept with his feet, his eyes are connected to his feet. But what we try to do is we want to be in line with the top of the drop. So when the quarterback hits the top of his drop, say he's in the shotgun and he's under normal 5-step timing. So if he was under center, it's a five rhythm drop, and in the gun, it'll be a 3 rhythm drop. We want that first receiver to be open when that third step hits the ground. So if that first receiver is open, the ball is going to come out right now on the plane. Now, if the quarterback has to hitch or reset off of the step, it's not open, he can see that as he's processing the information. So he hits the third step, and immediately that triggers him to hitch to the next receiver. So once he's taken that hitch, he knows I'm off of the first guy and I'm on to the second player. And as I've looked at it and I've read the defense when I'm with my eyes in sync with my, puts me onto that second receiver. And as I move that second receiver on that first hitch, the ball's out to him. And if the ball's not out to him, I'm onto the third player. Once I hit that second hitch, most of the time you're going to have to start moving yourself up into the pocket in what we would call a hitch, go or throw mentality off of that second hitch. Because not often are you going to be back there able to hitch and try to work all the way through. But that's kind of what we talk about when we say read it with your feet. When I hit that top of the drop, the ball's out right now if 1 is open. If 1's not open, I'm hitching back to 2. If 2's not open, I hitch one more time, and I may start to move my body towards the line of scrimmage with still maintaining a passing profile back to 3 with the ability or check down after that. But that's really kind of what we talk about as far as leading with our feet. The concept has to be in line with the quarterback's drop so the ball can come out at the right time to the right player in the right spot.
I think that's a great way to calibrate your passing game. Now, the one thing I learned pretty quick as we got into doing it like this is that we had to get our receivers on the same page too. So, it's funny, you see all these videos on YouTube and these guys doing all kinds of stuff at the line of scrimmage and, or at the top of a route. And, in all reality, within a rhythm passing game, within a calibrated passing game, some of those moves just don't work. In fact, it'll take the quarterback off you pretty quick. That, especially if it's that first look, you can't spend a ton of time. You got to be running. So how do you coach up the receivers within your system to be able to do those things and again, get calibrated so that they're coming out of their break, the quarterback's able to deliver them the ball? Because if they're not there, if they've wasted time on the line of scrimmage or, on their break or whatever it might be, he's got to move on.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, that's really important, especially really where does that come into play? A couple different thoughts. One would be man-to-man coverage, right, or press coverage. Maybe they're playing quarters press or they're playing true sort of cover one, when it's press, whether they're playing hole or robber or something like that. But when the quarterback comes out and as he's assessing his pre-snap keys, he's looking at a boundary safety, he's looking at an apex defender, he's seeing it, do I have press? What is the coverage, to give him the intel as to where the ball really ought to go within this concept. The quarterback will be taught when it's press coverage, the timing may be thrown off just a split second, So he also has to adjust just a hair with his drop where he may need to sit on that back foot just for a second. For example, maybe on a slant, it's not just going to be catch, plant, and throw, right? He may have to sit on that back foot to throw a slant versus press coverage or something like that. But what also, could happen is where he's taking his drop and he knows it's man-to-man coverage, he's able to get off of one. If one's a stationary target, he knows I'm not throwing it to that guy. And then he can really progress to number two, which may be a runaway route where that has man answers built in within it. Does that make sense? So where that's something that you have to teach the quarterback as well is if one's taken away, we know we're now hitching to number two. And number two, his timing may slightly pause just a split second, but also we will have an adjustment, like a man adjustment in depth in the route concept. So say you're running a curl route, maybe you're running a curl at 12 versus press man, that curl may only be at 10 now. And so then that will still time up with the quarterback's feet. So I think that it's all built in as part of the learning process for the quarterback and the receivers is knowing where we need to be and when we need to be there. And for the quarterback versus press or something along those lines, the timing is probably going to be thrown off just a split second. So I may have to be just a little bit more patient.
With your drill work, your individual work with your QBs, I know we, again, would work a lot of this. I mean, we were always talking about that timing, that rhythm, that calibration, so they understood, when we're doing a drill, nothing changes. Your eyes and feet are going to a certain place. How are you training the quarterback up? What things go into, your daily work as well as the stuff you're going to reinforce in, Skelly or team or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I always started off with just, your quick standard warm-up drills, but every single day we were going to get through the drops that we had going on in practice that day. And we would call out a route and, we're going to run a drop, and it might just be in our warm-up session where we're just with the quarterbacks down there, an individual, and we're just going through, hey, we're doing under center. Okay, we got 3-step drop. We're throwing a flat route, and we got a stick route. Okay, we're going to take the appropriate drop, 1, 2, 3, plant and throw, and then 1, 2, 3, sit on it, find the stick. Or it could be, it could be like a curl route or something along those lines. But we're running what we would call Hank, right, with a sit over a ball with a curl on the outside and flat routes, right? So as you're building those things, the quarterback has got to have his eyes in the right area as we're spot dropping and working on our drops so that the quarterback knows that we're not just out here just taking drops to take drops. We're getting a mental rep on a specific play while we're practicing our drop and getting warm all at the same time. And then as you get warm, you start building in spot drop throws. And then you're calling out a play and you're giving him a 1, a 2, a 3, or maybe if you have enough guys, you can have a defender out there that you can kind of cover up 1 to make him hitch back to 2 and those types of things. But all that stuff is really good to get the quarterback loose, warmed up, get his feet hot and ready for practice while also getting a mental rep at each play that may be in for that day. As the quarterbacks get going, what you also have to understand is more often than not, in the game, it's not going to be exactly perfect like you draw on the sheet, or you take just a true 5 and a hitch and the ball's gone. They have to be able to throw from, maybe a frontal position where their feet aren't totally in what we would call a pass profile, but where they've had to move off of the spot to find a little space in the pocket. So as you've developed the quarterbacks and they're kind of understanding the number one drop, the day one drop, you can then start to incorporate a few of those other things to move them around to making maybe a non-traditional throw, or from a different arm angle that they may need to work to find that route within the timing of it and the scope of what you're trying to accomplish with the routes and all that stuff.
And I love that, you think of all the opportunities and even doing some stuff with some non-throws. I mean, one really effective drill, I picked this up from Dub Maddox years ago, was just a concept call drill. So the concept call drill was basically these guys would line up, we'd give them a play call. So we'd call, rip 6, 65 takeoff, right? And so those, we give one quarterback the cadence, the other guys are all across the line, and I'm just watching them, right? Those guys are taking their drops, and I should see their eyes going to exact places, moving with their feet, and they're just calling it out. So they might say, seam, dig, comeback, and I see their feet moving to it. I think that kind of stuff just becomes very effective and reinforces that the eyes and feet moving through the progression.
No, yeah. Anything you can do to get those physical reps to train the feet and train the eyes all at the same time are really gonna help and get those quarterbacks to progress within the offense and within the structure of what you're trying to do. That, to me, like you're saying, is give them a play. Don't just go out there and say, hey, we're gonna practice our 5-step drops. Okay, well, great, that's fine. But what play am I running this drop on? Then you can get really more of a cross training of the offense in addition to their fundamentals.
Definitely. I love that stuff. Thanks for sharing all that with us. Again, I think it's really useful. And I would point our listeners back to, look in our show notes. I'll link. I know we've had a couple where we've discussed these kind of concepts for quarterbacks. Coach, I got to ask you, moving to the XFL, some innovative rule changes, a lot of things, when you see them, you're like, wow, how's that going to work out? What were some things you were, I guess, pleasantly surprised with that, once you saw it and, had to work within it, you thought, this is not a bad idea?
Being my first time in professional football, there's still a few changes from the NFL where, maybe you had 2 steps in bounds. In our league, in the XFL, you still only had 1, just like college. So there was that aspect that actually sped the game up a little bit. It limited some of the reviews that needed to happen. But really, ultimately, the one that was very intriguing was the 25-second play clock. That sped the game up significantly. Now, the funny thing is we didn't have we averaged real less plays than you might have in a normal game. We're still getting 65 plays in a game offensively because you're forced really to push your tempo and have your calls ready and get on the line and call the play. The other thing that I thought was really unique and ended up being more difficult than I think anybody thought was the extra points, where the league, we did away with the kicking of an extra point. Like in college, it's down there at the 3, and in the NFL, it's back at they're kicking a 35-yard field goal. For us, it was the 1-point conversion from the 2, the 2-point conversion from the 5, and a 3-point conversion from the 10. That brought some excitement to it. But it was more challenging than I think anybody thought that it was going to be, based on what you can do. So you really had to think about that and put a lot of time and effort into what you were going to run in those situations. Unfortunately, we weren't as successful as we would have liked to be in that world. But I thought that was kind of a game changer, and it brought more excitement to the game.
Definitely. Well, I thought there were a ton of neat concepts there. Unfortunately, you guys were forced to cut your season short along with every other sport in the country. We're all missing sports right now, but it's been great to see you and your progression here from the first time I met you to where you're at as a coach, and I'm excited to see where you go from here.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, and we just hope everybody out there is staying at home and staying safe, and everybody we'll all get through it in due time, and things will be back out there on the field come next spring.
Coaches, again, I want to remind you of what we're doing with the football development model. Please push this down to your youth coaches. I think this is a great way for you to get some organization and structure beyond what you've already done. Check it out, all of our program development for youth football at fdm.usafootball.com. Again, check out our systems for blocking, tackling, and defeating blocks at footballdevelopment.com. If you register with your email, you get your choice of 3 free videos. There's some great things in there. I think things that as you get going again, you can get into the summer and maybe make up on some things that you might have lost if you had a spring ball, if you had time here in the spring to work on football. Some great drills for all those phases of contact. If you're enjoying the podcast, please head over to iTunes or your platform and give us a 5-star rate. If you have a minute, write a review. We really appreciate it, and we will read your review on our highlight show that we do at the end of the week.
Thanks for listening to USA Football's Coach and Coordinator Podcast. For more resources, visit the Coach Performance Center at usafootball.com.